for us to take a look at the headlines. To change a constitution or not? That is a question that is one of the big discussions today. Leaders appear divided on whether or not we should have a referendum and what should be the referendum question, what should be the intention of that. Meanwhile, Deputy President William Ruto now claims that Raila Odinga is out to have him leave Jubilee. How can that even happen? We'll be looking at these headlines. But, of course, we cannot avoid this headline that's on the front pages today. And a suspect shot himself in Maribe bedroom. That's the front page of the Daily Nation. That's a big story we're looking at this morning. On the Standard, detectives probe Maribe's lover's suicide attempt. Of course, it is one of those stories that's very dicey to discuss for a journalist, especially when you're talking about your colleague. But it is on the headlines, and definitely we have to look at it. The expectation is that Jackie Maribe, alongside someone else who was also arrested at the weekend, will be presented in court. And we want to discuss the possible scenarios that we should expect today. Incidentally, both my panelists are lawyers. Joy Mdivo, lawyer and also social political commentator. Good morning, karibu sana.
Asante.
Yes, and Millie Odhiambo, MP Suba North, also a lawyer. Good morning, karibu sana.
Good morning.
So, of course, over the past few months, we've dealt a lot with headlines that have to do with murder. Of course, Governor Okoth Obado is behind bars. He's been charged with murder. He pleaded not guilty to that. We expect that he'll be back on, I think, next week for a bail application. Now we're looking at a different incident. No one has taken plea on this matter yet. But because when police arrest 5, 6, 7 people, and they're all arraigned and probably charged, what are the possible charges? Because there is a main suspect. There's someone else, like in this case, 2 other people who've been arrested. Do we expect that all of them will just be simply charged with murder? Or are there different classifications of different charges related to murder?
With criminal cases, the main thing that the prosecutor goes for, or the investigator goes for, is what we call the ingredients of the crime. So the ingredients for murder are very specific. So you need to target whoever you're targeting, plan for it, and kill them. So if they don't have the evidence to show that you were involved in that entire process from the conception to the execution, even if you're not the one who pulled the trigger, but if you're involved in the entire process, then you find yourself being charged with murder because all the ingredients fit. But then there are other people who come into the picture after the murder. So you're an accessory after the fact. Maybe you were involved in hiding somebody. Maybe they're trying to get away from the police and you conceal them. Maybe you help them dispose of the evidence. So that those crimes that where you're aiding and abetting, where you're an accessory after the fact, where you are not directly linked to the murder, but your actions afterwards predispose you to being linked to the murder. So it's very difficult for everybody involved to be charged with murder, because that's the surest way for the charge to fail.
Yes.
Because the ingredients are very specific, and to prove them is beyond reasonable doubt. That's the standard.
And don't you think that probably, because we've also complained quite a lot that many of these murder incidences, murder cases go unresolved, probably is because of having defective charges, charging someone with murder instead of maybe a different charge?
Well, that's true, but before I respond to that, I think one of the things I would want to say that it's very unfortunate, the trend that we are witnessing, where people think it's so easy to kill humans. We are treating human beings like dogs. And it goes back to the same issue that I'm saying, that our conscience as a nation appears to be dead. And the things that should shame us and embarrass us no longer cause even a ripple, really. I think there's something pretty wrong. But having said that, I think I'd also want to say that it is very unfortunate that we have especially young girls. And the young girls are either the ones who are victims, or somehow, you know, like, unfortunately in this situation, that you have somebody like Jackie Maribe in the mix. But the issue right now is also that we are dealing with very scant information. A lot of it is much more of what you see on Facebook, which is rumors, or what you see in the papers. which we cannot say authoritatively is the truth, or rather what the prosecutors have. But unfortunately for us, sometimes our prosecutors, as you say correctly, make the mistake of charging people with the wrong offense, because you know in the cases of murder, you have to prove that there was a guilty mind and there was an act. It's not just that you killed somebody, but that you actually intended to kill that person. But sometimes you find that a person who is generally around that area, or who is around the circumstances, may be charged with murder when they are probably not, they don't have the ingredients, they don't have the intent, which is a guilty mind, and they don't have, there's nothing showing the intent. Like, for instance, I would say this case. I would want to say, as at this point, I don't have much in terms of the facts. But assumingly, because some of the things I'm hearing people are saying is that there was a bullet under Jackie's bed, there was a bullet on the walls, and this is a guy who always has guns. Maybe there are these young people who like experimenting and joking with guns. So there may be a reason why there are bullets or there's a gun holder. It does not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily have to be linked. Not every bullet or a bullet hole is linked to this murder, the murder of this girl. So there must be a nexus between him and this girl, and there must be a motive. So our prosecutors have to be very careful how they navigate this. Because the expectation is that fine, 2 other suspects, including Jackie Maribe, will be presented in court today. If at all the prosecutors proffer any charges, they decide to charge them, what possibly are the other possible charges apart from just direct murder?
Accessories, aiding and abetting. Maybe
are those different? Are those different?
Yes,
accessory to murder is different from aiding and abetting. Okay,
if you're an accessory, you've got something to do with the actual in the entire scenario. Maybe you're the one who washed the bed sheets afterwards, or you're the one who made a fake 911 call. Okay, 911. Maybe you made a false. You gave somebody an alibi. You helped conceal the murder. But some of these crimes are the ones, for example, you didn't even know that is what you're involved in. So, for example, if you are a taxi driver and you are told, just wait for me at a certain place, pick me up and drop me somewhere else. Now, that's a guy who's aiding and abetting, and sometimes they don't even know that they're aiding and abetting, but you find yourself caught up in the mix after everybody has been arrested. Or like, I wasn't a part of the gang, but in you helped the process. Yes, in committing, you were part of the equation. And sometimes you find yourself also, for example, like what we are seeing now, when a neighbor is involved as well, you are deemed to have been able to know, like Mheshimiwa says, because you are around and about the circumstances, this could not have happened without you either seeing or allowing it to happen. So you find yourself also caught up in the aiding and the abetting. And at times also you find somebody is being charged because you are actively trying to conceal. Now this is a tragedy that many spouses find themselves in. So somebody comes and clearly something has happened, and you're looking and you're thinking, oh, this is my loved one. So you panic. So you start helping cover up. Okay, so yes, I'm going to say I was with you. I'm going to, and then you do those things at the time, imagining that you're assisting your loved one, but by the time you're done, you realize you've put yourself squarely in the mix. Maybe it is your facilities that were used, like when you hear allegations of it is your vehicle that is being used, or that it is being your house that is being used to conceal things. So all this handling suspected stolen property. So there's so many things that can come out of this one equation. And it is something that very many people can just simply find themselves in, because you do not have to have been there. But some of these things may just find you, that someone close to you, you talked about spouses, but in this case we're talking about even a fiancé. Is there a difference? There is a difference. Yes. There is a difference between a spouse and an intended spouse. An intended spouse and a spouse, because there are certain legal rules that protect to some degree a spouse. But if you are an intended spouse, you are not really covered. So you say for a spouse, covering for their partner, they might be not covering for, but there are certain, I'm trying to use simpler terms, but I think there might be
a little bit of understanding, if I would say so legally.
A defense.
If yeah, like a defense if you're a spouse. But if you're, the law doesn't quite recognize the same manner an intended spouse, the same way it recognizes.
Even if you live together?
Even if you live together. Because, you know, for example, you cannot be forced to testify against your spouse. But if you're dating, there is nothing protecting you from not... There's nothing
protecting you, except, for instance, if you have a sympathetic judge or magistrate, then they would take that into circumstances as to maybe your emotional being, though it may not help you because then now it becomes discretionary. And I think one of the things that's coming out of this is that Kenyans need to know that everybody is presumed to know the law. And part of the reason I'm saying this is that it is presumed that you know that if somebody, for instance, has a gunshot wound, that you need to immediately report to the police. It's not something that
people...
You'll be shocked at the number of Kenyans who have no idea what they would do in case of finding someone with a gunshot wound.
I was asking people in my house, my nieces and nephews, and they told me, I told them, if somebody has a gunshot wound and they walk into the house, what do? They say, we rush them to the hospital. And I said, well, you'll rush them to the hospital and they call the police. So either way, you have to call the police. So you need to call the police.
Because it's not a normal wound.
So even if one of you is rushing to the hospital, one of you needs to rush to the police. It's like recently when I found, when I was doing my work up country, and when I'd done and I was in a neighboring constituency, I came across this girl who looked like she had apparently been raped. And it's actually my team that found her. And when they brought her, they said, oh, we found this girl. She's in distress. She looks like she's been raped. And the only thing they were thinking about is taking her to hospital and they're done with. And I said, no, immediately becomes
it's a crime.
A police case. And in this instance, the lady was with the alleged victim. And they were still just chatting and negotiating. And I'm like, no, this is even the victim, the alleged suspect was shocked. How did it become, a police case? So people need to understand that what is the ingredient of rape. Like this one was an ex-boyfriend who allegedly raped her. And I think for him, he thought, oh, since you are my ex-girlfriend, I have every right at any time I want. So, and the same way with murder. And the same way with aiding and abetting, what are the ingredients? If it doesn't matter how in love you are or how intimate you are, but if you see somebody in circumstances that look like they are involved in something not right, maybe the best thing is to completely, from the get-go, distance yourself immediately.
And that's the difference, because ignorance is no defense in law. But people need to know. In case my friend, and maybe it's not even a spouse or even an intended spouse, even just a friend, comes and tells me, probably I've committed this kind of crime. What are my responsibilities as a friend? Should I say, okay, I've not had anything you've told me? Or should I go straight to the police? Because it's a very dicey situation.
Because you can go ahead and say, no, I haven't had anything. But the problem is, the day he finally gets arrested, and then investigations start, and then they discover, oh, Indimuli actually knows something, then you're in trouble. It's like if you're living in a plot, not only you're several houses in a plot, and there's this single guy who lives next to you, and he never takes care of his trash. He tells you what's an ekagetu. And then one day you're disposing, and people investigate, and they find the body parts and things inside. You'll say, oh, this is not my trash, this is my neighbor's trash. And they'll be like, it's the same thing with airports. Did you pack your own bag? So if you open and you find there's drugs inside, we don't care who else packed the bag. You're the ones who's been found with it. So there's need for that, lack of a better word, special awareness, so that you know what's going on around you. That's the concept behind Nyumba Kumi. Know who's living next to you, what are they up to? Because if something happens, you will be presumed to have been part of the cover-up. You knew this guy was up to no good, and you decided to give him shelter. At that time, extricating yourself from that situation becomes so difficult, because now you're the one who's put on the back foot to defend yourself. But for example, if somebody comes and openly confesses, by the way, I did 1, 2, 3, unless you are so sure of which divine covering that you're not going to be implicated, some of those activities you need to just report, because in the event you're caught up in it,
so my
you
responsibility
will pay
look
us.
like you're covering
you
up.
just have to report.
You
And probably that's the biggest problem, because many will just say, okay, fine, it's not my problem. Let me stay away from it.
It becomes your problem the moment you know.
The moment you hear it.
The moment you know, because then you are part of the cover-up. Because you are not expected to cover up a crime. So the moment you know, and you're, especially when you are doing active, you look like you are doing active cover-up. If, for instance, you are doing certain processes or actions that would put you in a situation that look like you're doing a cover-up, it becomes really, really bad legally for you.
Wow.